So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. Just a few things as we get started. Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for, because God's always listening. And I would tell you that, I asked God for some good basketball games, and he gave me not one but two overtime games yesterday, and I stayed up till 1 a.m. watching basketball. So I would say that I'm thankful that today is a bit of a repeat lesson. So those of you that have been with me for longer than 6 months, we did this lesson last fall, but because I am technologically challenged, I didn't record the audio for it. And I would tell you that after that lesson, we went home and Trace got after me. She gets mad at me from time to time. Guys, I don't know if that ever happens in your, Gary, I know. How can that be? How could anybody be mad at me? But believe it or not, Trace finds ways to be mad at me. And then the next day she said to me, Cheryl wasn't there. When are you going to post the lesson? And then I said, well, funny that you should say that because I didn't record the audio to the lesson. So Cheryl, this lesson is for you. That's why we're coming back for this. So while Trace got after me many, many months ago for this lesson, I also need to share with you that she got after me last week. We got home and she said, last week was a tough lesson for me. I had a hard time seeing it come together. And, as you go through teaching a lesson, sometimes it sort of feels good, and sometimes you go through the lesson and it doesn't feel as good. I was completely bewildered last week, but I sat down and I watched a lesson, and I think it was actually reasonably good last week. So Trace said it was a better lesson than what you're giving yourself credit for. And as I look at this, I'm going to tell you that I think this one fits nicely with that. So even though it's a repeat, I think you'll get value out of it again today. And if you haven't been here for a while, or if you missed the one before, Cheryl, then we have that. I would tell you this also. There's also something about doing it a second time. It's probably been 10 or 12 years ago. I went to a conference in Washington, D.C., and the keynote speaker came out, and he gave this. And his lesson was he put a picture up on the screen, and he talked about this picture for a while, and and I was like, okay. And then about 10 months later, I was at a different conference, and the same guy came out, and he gave the exact same lesson, and I was like, oh, I picked up different things. So there's times that whenever you go through something again, you'll pick up something different. Anybody ever watch a movie more than once? Things get funnier the second time you see it. You pick up on things. Here's one of my. This is sort of a timely thing, but any of you ever watch Bugs Bunny and Daffy, the rabbit season, duck season? It is glorious. And if you watch that, there's a time whenever they're going back and forth, rabbit season, duck season. And if you've watched it enough, you can watch Bugs Bunny, and he sort of turns to the camera and he wiggles his eyebrow just a little bit, and that's when he reverses it. And it took me watching that several times before I finally caught it. It's a neat thing. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our core values. We have talked before that Jesus had a core value, and Jesus' core value was that he would always value people. All right? And at Cochranton Community Church, we have 8 core values. Those core values are outreach, and I think I heard prayer, Bible, stewardship, relevancy, I heard, community, service, worship. And in this group, we have two core values. One of those core values is timeliness, and the other is, and at this time of year, I would also say the core value is hoops. But we're not going to adopt that as an official. We're not going to adopt that as an official value of this group just yet. We'll think about it. We'll think about it, all right? So I do want to just give you the reminder, no class next week. We have a different schedule next week, so there will not be any Bible classes. So just be aware of that. Do invite a friend. Do come to either service next week, but we will not be having class here. On the other side of that, as I looked at things, what we're going to be doing on the other side of Easter is we're going to be looking at the lesson of the rubber band. And that's one of my favorite lessons. It's been several years since I've taught that one. But do yourself a favor and wear a rubber band around your wrist whenever you come on that day. And then I think what I'm going to look at, and this will be for the 14th of April, a lesson on where two or more gather. Where two or more gather. So I just want to give you that. And for those of you that are very curious what I'm thinking about for the week after that, it's not on the board, is a lesson on confusion. Has anybody ever been confused? Yeah? You yeah, jump up and down, right? Do a cartwheel. That's how confused I've been, right? You know, so that's just the forecast of what we're looking for. So today, this is a lesson that was presented to me several years ago, and it's just something that stuck. And when the opportunity came to present it, I thought this is a good one, because we have in this group a core value of growth, but we also have some challenges to grow. We absolutely have some of those challenges to grow, and a big part of those challenges that we have in our growth comes from our programming. We have all been programmed, not dissimilar to how a computer is programmed, right? We have some of this. So just as a quick means, you know, I like to draw my little stick man here, right? And the stick man tells us that our programming lives here. We have some programming P that lives there, and these are the things that we do automatically. There's things that you automatically do, and this stuck out to me. Have you ever encountered somebody and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And they come back and they say, "Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?" And you say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then you short circuit because you had. Have you ever? Am I the only one that's ever done that? Sean, you've done that? Yeah, it's like you have this program, you have this default way that you start to engage people, and every once in a while you flub that up. And when that happens, you're standing there thinking, "Oh my goodness, they think I'm a complete fool," right? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Sean, you and me, we're there. Okay, all right, but you know, so much of our lives are spent on autopilot. There's so many things that we do automatically. You know, how many things do you do on any given day that you do them really without thinking about it? It's just automatic. It's just automatic. So we're going to start off this morning, and you may remember this from when we did it before, but I want to check your programming this morning because we've all been programmed with some things. And I'm very suspicious that we may have some very similar programming. So I want to, I'm going to give you some phrases, and I'm just curious if you may know how these phrases end. So have you ever heard the phrase, "Don't count your chickens before they hatch"? You've heard that, okay? How about this one? The early bird. You've heard that. All that glitters is not gold. Actions speak. Oh, you've been programmed. You've been programmed that way, haven't you? How about this one? A penny for your. You've heard that, okay? Don't put all your eggs. You've been programmed that way, huh? The grass is always greener on the other side. You've heard that. You've heard that. Now, is there anybody here that was not born in Cochranton? Oh my. You were programmed that. You see, I've lived in Cochranton my whole life. I've lived on the same street my entire life. That's how I was programmed. But it seems like you may have similar programming to me, even if you're not from here. How about this one? Haste makes a picture is worth. Don't cry over spilled milk. When in Rome, you've been where are you all from? Anybody was born out of state? Oh, wow. And you've heard that there, too. How about this one? A stitch in time. 9 what? I don't have any idea. But it's programming. It's programming. We've been programmed that way, haven't we? Don't bite the hand that feeds you. You've heard that. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. My name's Jesse McCullough. I've lived on Franklin Pike for 40-some years. In full transparency, there was one time, and it's been many years ago, where I said, man, I can't believe I turned whatever number this year. And Trace looks at me like I have 2 heads and says, you're already that age. You're turning a year older this year. And then as I did, I actually got a piece of paper out and did the math, and she was right. So I don't know the answers to some of these things. But how about this one? Money doesn't grow on, you heard that where you're from. You were programmed that way. Get out. It sounds like we've had similar programming, does it not? Now, the programming that we have is meant to help us navigate through life, right? That's what we do. We get programmed this way to help us do tasks, to help us do things, and do them easily, to do them quickly, right? So I want to give you these 2. Have you ever heard this one? Look before you. You've heard that. How about this one? He who hesitates. Now, I want you to think about this programming. I want you to think about this program. What does it really mean? What does it really mean? Look before you leap tells you to do what? Be careful. Stop. Slow down. Right? Let's take it easy here. Look before you leap. He who hesitates is lost. What's it tell you? Go, go, go. You have one that's saying stop and one says go. We have this conflicting programming. And when we have this conflicting programming, it's really interesting. It creates this this idea of it's called cognitive dissonance. That's the fancy science-y term of it. But let me just break this down for you. You have sound, and sometimes things will sound again, and when they sound again, we say that resounds, right? Resound. And if it's a bad thing, it would be a dis sound, right? And this is where we get this term dissonance. We get these things, and it just doesn't sound right. And what happens is when it doesn't sound right, we get confused, and it's, do I go this way? Do I go this way? And whenever we don't know which way we're supposed to go, you know what we do? We do nothing. You stop. And you do nothing. We short circuit. Now, I want to build a model with you this morning. And with this model, I hope to make some of this more clear on how all this works. So the first thing I want to give you, and I should have drawn the stick man somewhere else, so we'll come back to him in a minute. The first thing is this, is that we have thoughts. There are thoughts that we have. There's thoughts I can't spell, but T-H-O-U-G-H-T, right? Now, if there are thoughts that we think again and again and again and again and again and again and again, repeated thoughts become beliefs. That programming that we just reviewed, I'm going to suggest to you that those are beliefs that you have. Those are things that if somebody gave you some situation, you may very well just say, hey, this is what I believe. Look before you leap. He who hesitates is lost. When in Rome, do as the Romans, right? You may say something like that, right? Now, thoughts drive beliefs, but beliefs drive behavior. What you believe is what you do. All right? Behavior never lies. Behavior never lies. So what you constantly think about, what you believe, that's how you will behave. And when you behave things over and over and over again, we have a special behavior. We call these repeated behaviors are called habits. Some of us, I hope all of you have the habit of brushing your teeth, right? And whenever you do it so many times, it happens autopilot. Autopilot. Like you get to the point where you just, have you ever brushed your teeth and then not remembered that you brushed your teeth? And you go back and then you find that your toothbrush is wet and you're like, oh, I must have already brushed my teeth today. Like, that's happened to me once or twice, right? And based on what we do over and over and over again, our habits will drive our results. It will drive the things that we do. Now, I share this with you because, let's turn the page here. I don't want to have to redraw my stick man again, but we're going to draw the stick man here just to give us something to look at. So we have our stick man, and we have these thoughts that come in, and we get these different thoughts, and the thoughts that we repeat again and again and again and again and again, they become stuck here in our subconscious, right? That's where they go. So we have a thought that comes here. It comes down here. It becomes a thought or a belief, and then based on what we believe, we will have a congruent type action that will give us some result. Right? Now, I'm thinking now I probably could have improved this lesson. I think this is what James talks about when he says faith without deeds. Right? Whenever you start believing those things, what should we expect to see? It should become natural to flow that way. Behavior never lies. So when we understand how this works, this becomes pretty much an automatic way of looking at things. And we do so much automatically. I've seen some estimates that say between 90 and 95% of what we do on any given day is automatic. And thank goodness. Like, I don't know about you, but I struggle with life. And if I had to remember to breathe and make my heart beat on top of all this stuff, like, I'd be in rough shape. I would be. Like, that's where we are. Now, what this does is this puts us in a place that we call our comfort zone. Who has been in a comfort zone? We should probably all raise our hands that we have been in a comfort zone. This is what we will call normal. This is what we call normal. This is our average everyday normal. Some of us have a certain level of nonsense that we deal with. Some of us have a certain level of nonsense that we give out on any given day, right? That's how we go. But what I want you to remember, and I probably should have drawn this a little bit different, but we also have goals and dreams. Anybody here have a goal or a dream? A few of you will admit to it. I think we all have. We all have some goal or some dream. All right? And I'll go so far as God's done something for you. He's also given you this. He's given you a purpose. Now, just out of curiosity, I've asked you this before, but by show of hands, how many of you know God's purpose for you? There's a few, right? There's some of us that are still trying to figure it out. And as I've shared with you before, if you don't know God's purpose for you, your purpose is to figure out God's purpose for you. It's not that difficult, right? You know, it's like, hey, we got to figure this out, right? Now, you can know God's purpose for you, but I would ask you this: how fully are you in that? How fully are you realizing that purpose? How many of you are living up to that potential of your purpose? And I think we would all agree that we can do more, that God has more for us, that with whatever it is, there's one more person, there's one more thing that we can do to step forward into those things that God would have us do. And what this does is this puts us at odds with our comfort zone, because it is somewhere over here. This is a place that we would aspire to be. It's a place we would aspire to be. Now, there's things that can pull us backwards or forwards, and last time I did this, I drew it differently, so that this is going to be a little bit different. But we have our dreams, and they tell us to move forward, right? We have our wants, right? Our wants may have, they may encourage us to move forward. This is why you should all be sitting up front so you can see this chicken scratch here at the bottom of the board, right? But we also have things that hold us back. We have these things that say go forward, but we have these other things that hold us back, and those things that hold us back are fears. Fears keep us from moving forward. Anybody ever encountered fear before? Yeah, we've encountered fear. We've encountered fear, and when we encounter this, these fears, we go through some mental evaluation and calculation that evaluates our wants and our goals and our dreams, and we compare that to our fears. And what happens is we get stuck in this middle ground, and we call it the comfort zone, and we settle. We settle. We say, maybe this is good enough. Now, here's the deal. I want you to think about this. When it comes down to it, for each one of us, our comfort zone is not really what we want. Think about that. Your comfort zone is not something we really want. It's something that we'll tolerate. We'll put up with it, but it's not something that we want. And we end up settling in life. Do you know anybody who has settled in life? Yeah. People settle in life all the time. Trace says to me the other day, "What are we going to have for dinner?" This is a conversation that happens with great regularity in my household. And I said, well, I went to the store and I bought these things the other day. She said, I think we'll have meatloaf. And we had meatloaf. And it was okay. It was okay. It was okay, right? Yeah, that there's some programming there, right? Right? Yeah. So, Now, what we end up settling, right, because we perceive some amount of risk. There's this amount of risk, there's this amount of dream, and it balances out, and that's where we settle. That's where we settle. Now, I want to be very careful about how I say this, and do not leave this room today if you are confused by what I say here at all. Come up and have a conversation with me. I'll do my best to unpack this. But there is nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean no thing that surprises God. There's nothing. God is not taken by surprise about anything. So when He looks down on you, when He looks down on me, and He sees where we are, He sees us in our comfort zone, He knows our purpose and dreams, He knows He knows the stuff that we go through, He is not surprised. He is not surprised at all. You are right where you are supposed to be right now. And I say that to you as a word of encouragement. You may say, this is where I am, but this is where I want to be. I'm struggling to figure this out. God's not surprised. Not at all. Not surprised at all. But I want you to consider where you are relative to your purpose. God created you for a purpose. And if you don't feel like you are in that place yet, if you're not in that place yet, and I think what we've seen this morning is that probably describes most of us. You know, most of us think that we can move somewhere in that direction. I also want you to know this morning. God is not disappointed in you. And some of you may need to write that down this morning. Wherever you find yourself, God is not disappointed with you today. You're right where He knew you would be. And I'll tell you, I struggled with that for a long time. I probably still struggle with that a little bit. That, you know, God gets up in the morning, looks down and says, oh, Jess, what are you doing? No, that's the process, right? God's not disappointed with us. And this is just the thinking behind it. I'll just give you the behind the scene. Because if God got up in the morning and He looked down and He saw you and He was like, what on earth are you doing? Why are you here? That would mean that God is not all-knowing. That would mean that God is not all-powerful. And we know that God is all-knowing. And we know that God is all-powerful. So there's nothing you can do that takes Him by surprise. He's like, you're right where you're supposed to be. You're right where you're supposed to be. But here's the question. Are you going to stay there? Are you going to stay where you are? You see, we all face an invitation each day, an invitation to grow into God's purpose. And to do this, we got to leave our comfort zone. We got to step outside. And when we go outside of our comfort zone, we are going to experience something called discomfort. This mean a very, very fancy way of saying not comfortable, right? There's going to be some challenge. There's going to be some hurt. You might be scared to step out of that. You may very well be scared to step out of that comfort zone. And whenever we step out of our comfort zone, you need to understand this, that when we step out of this, there's a special word for this, and it's called risk. You got to take a risk. Now, to be clear, as we talk about risk today, I'm not talking about risk in the terms of being reckless. I'm not talking about risk where you would do physical harm to yourself or somebody else, because I actually believe look before you leap is pretty good advice in the right context, right? Look before you leap makes a whole lot of sense before you cross the road. Right? Before you step out in traffic. That's pretty good advice. But let me see what else I have here. It applies to skydiving, right? It applies to tightrope walking across the Grand Canyon. It applies to walking blindfolded into traffic, right? You get my point. Look before you leap does not apply towards growing into your purpose. It doesn't apply to not sharing Christ's love for others with others. Sometimes you got to step out and you got to take that risk, right? You know, I'm talking about the risk of stepping outside of your comfort zone to expand and improve yourself and to improve the people around you, right? That's where we are. So whenever we face risk, we face a choice. We can choose faith or we can choose fear. And this is where it happens. It happens up in here. You have, I'm going to put fear on this side and faith on this side. Right? We got to figure out which way we're going to go. Fear or faith? Fear or faith? Fear is typically of the loss of something, right? When we have fear, we say, "Oh my goodness, if I do this, I might be embarrassed." Right? We'll lose something there. My ego could be wounded if I do this and it doesn't work out well. My pride could be injured. Maybe somebody will make fun of me. Those are some things that come to mind. I just decided I would start making fun of myself. Then that helped minimize a lot of those challenges that I faced. But when we look at this, we get an idea. We get a little, I'm going to put a little light, I can't draw a light bulb. We get this idea, it comes in here, right? And the idea could be to improve our health. It could be to build a relationship. It could be to serve somebody's need. And it comes up here into our conscious brain. And then we have to fight against our unconscious brain where our programming is, especially if we do not have I down here, right? We've got to push to get that through so that we would have some I type of action that would give some I type of result. I'm probably being a little too confusing with that. I hope that makes some sense here this morning. And if we do this again and again and again, then this firmly takes takes root here, and it's what you do automatically. You do it automatically. Turn with me, if you would, to the book of Exodus chapter 3. Moses has been teaching me a lot over the last several months, and we're going to look at this particular part of the story this morning. How am I doing time-wise? Exodus chapter 3, verses 10 and 11. God says to Moses, "So now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." That's verse 10. Verse 11, but. Such a dangerous word. But means that we're going to go in the opposite direction. God says, go to Pharaoh, Moses, but Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God gives Moses this idea. Right? God gives Moses this idea, and Moses is facing this choice: fear or faith. That's what's happening here. And he's leaning towards the fear side, right? We see that. He says, "Who am I? Who am I that I should go do this? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And here is the challenge that we all face. Do we go the way of faith, which is to take action, or do we go the way of fear, which is to do nothing? Moses was fighting for nothing at first in this story. He's like, you know what? Living out here in the middle of nowhere, watching some sheep, it ain't so bad. It ain't so bad. And God continued that conversation. Now here's the thing. If we choose faith, and we have this type of action, we are going to get some type of result, right? So when we go the way of faith, which is to take action, or we can go the way of fear, which is to do nothing, and if we choose faith, we will get a result. The result may be good or bad, right? You may have a positive outcome, you may have a negative outcome, right? But I'll tell you this, if you do nothing, you get no result. There is no result that comes from doing nothing. And what happens is you stay stuck. You stay stuck. Because we take no actions, our fears cannot be proven true. Think about that. Because you take no action, this fear, this invisible monster that you wrestle with, it can't be proven true. And they remain solely a mental barrier. But when we exercise faith, we get a result, and it may be success, it may be failure, but we will get a result, and it may even disrupt our comfort zone. And this is where the title of today's lesson comes from. You know, when we exercise faith, no matter the result, we experience a change in our comfort zone. When we exercise faith, this starts to shift. Your comfort zone starts to shift. You start to move. And don't miss this. Our comfort zone, as we've established, is somewhere that we do not want to be. We want to be in a better place. And when you think about this, what are the real risk is in this is giving up something that you don't really want. Giving up your comfort zone is giving up something that you're giving up something that you're settling for. Giving up meatloaf, right? You'll settle for it, but hey, is there something better out there? I don't know, maybe meatloaf's top of your food chain. That could be. Our risk is to lose something that we do not really want. And I would ask you, what risk is that? What risk is that? You know, the note I have here would be like me risking losing a meatloaf and Pepsi. Not a big risk. It may be comfortable for a meal, but could I give that up in hopes of something else? Yeah, I could give that up in hopes of something else. Losing our comfort zone is the myth of risk. And now that we have a result, we can move forward with improved plans. Right? When we get this, we do this, now we get some type of result, and now what we can do is we can do something different. If we didn't get the result that we wanted, we can do something something different, something more, right? Our plans are improved because we now have some experience that we've gained, so long as we choose to lose from or so long as that we choose to learn from our experience. Right? We go back, we do it again. Now, there's some people who refuse to learn from their experience, and they do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and they get the same result. I think Einstein is allegedly quoted as saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like that's what. So you got to learn from the experience. You got to make it better, right? There's something to do there. Now, before I go forward, allow me to make this comment. Where do you think these new ideas come from? In the story of Moses, where did the idea of leading the Israelites out of Egypt come from? Came from God. Who said that over here? Oh, there you are. Yeah. So, Let's just have a little moment of humility here. Really good ideas, they don't come from you. You're all wonderful people. I love you all. Don't be offended by this, but I'm reasonably sure you're not quite good enough to come up with that idea on your own. That the good ideas that come to you come from God. That these are the ideas that help others. These are the ideas that lift people up, that make life better for you and those around you. Those are ideas that come from God, right? And the question is, will we do something about them, right? For Moses, that idea came from God, right? And I would suggest that God still gives ideas to us today. I think he still gives ideas to us today. Now, God does not give us exercises in frustration. I don't think God says, let me give you an idea just to torment you. I think he gives you an idea because he's going to provide a way for you to figure out how to get that done. Now, it may take you a while to figure it out. I know it's taken me a while to figure it out. That's where I find. But we must rely on him as we figure out how to navigate, making this idea a reality. And there's many examples in Scripture that we can examine. And I have a worksheet here for you today that, don't leave, well, I hope I have enough for everybody, but don't leave without it, of just some of these different examples of risks that people were challenged to take, right? When we look at the story of Moses, Moses was in a comfort zone as a shepherd in the wilderness when God came to him in the burning bush, right? That's where it was. God gives Moses this grand idea, go talk to Pharaoh, let my people go so that they can worship me in the desert. What does Moses do? He says, all right, I'll take that idea. He does that idea, and the result that he gets was failure. Failure. He delivered the message, he exercised faith, and he was met with failure, right? So he goes and he talks to God, and he's given the choice again. Is he going to step forward in faith, or is he going to just sit there in fear? And Moses says, I'll do the faith thing. And he goes back to Pharaoh. And he says, Pharaoh, let God's people go. And Pharaoh says, no. Failure. 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 But each time Moses comes back, he comes back with an improved plan each time. And for those of you that have ever done a study on just the plagues and stuff like that, there's a fascinating thing there. Maybe that's a separate lesson that we'll do at some point. But he kept improving. And then finally, he got Pharaoh's attention, and Pharaoh says, all right, go. Go. Right? This goes on and on. It goes on time and again until there is success and the Israelites are released. Now, I put up some other examples here. You can read all those stories in Exodus chapters 3 through 12. We're not going to read those today. But you look at the story of Esther, right? Esther becomes the Persian queen. And, and then there's this challenge that comes for the Jews. And she's given the idea to go talk to the king, even though she hasn't been summoned. It's a huge risk. It was a huge risk for her to take. But she stepped forward in faith. Jonah, he was told to go to Nineveh, and the fear and risk that Jonah faced made him run away. He went in the wrong direction at first, right? Story of David and Goliath. We see David taking this huge risk. He faces risk when he goes to face Goliath, right? And this is what we need to understand. We need to make a decision of faith or fear, and it may or may not work out. We may have the right plan or we may not, but along the way, if we look for it, we can find the things that work and we can find the things that don't work. I'm sure I've shared this with you before. My board's pretty full here. But the sculptor's principle. The sculptor is the only artist who makes their art by taking away from it. Every other artist makes their art by putting more to it, putting more paint on the canvas, whatever. But the sculptor is chiseling away. There's this piece of rock, and we'll take this away, we'll take this away. And that's essentially how we navigate through this. There's all these different ways that we can go, and we just, okay, this part doesn't work, this part doesn't work, this part doesn't work, and we end up finding our way through. That's how that works. You getting from where you are to where you want to be can very much be figuring out what doesn't work. So like from where you are to here, let's say that there's all these different ways for you to realize your purpose. And you may try this one and it doesn't work. Sculptor's principle, all right, get rid of that. You can try this one, doesn't work, right? You get rid of that one. This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. And you end up finding the way to get from where you are to your purpose, to your dream, to your goal. Now, some people may call this failing. The thing about failing is that you can do this on your own or you can do it with others. And that's the importance of community, and that's the importance of mentorship, that's the importance of discipleship, right? Those are things that can help you navigate through these things more quickly. You want to go from here to here? Somebody else is in this room that has that experience. Could you go to that person for help? The answer is, of course. Anybody in here facing a challenge or opportunity? This is where we all raise our hands, yes, right? We're all, you know what, I'm going to tell you, if you look around this room, you're going to find some people that could help you go from where you are a couple steps further ahead to your purpose pretty easily. That's why in a couple of weeks we're looking where two or more. Where two or more. We're going to come together on that, right? I'll raise my hand and be the first to admit I am scared of failing. That's not something that I look forward to. And I'm going to suggest to you that that's bad programming. I'm going to suggest that the same way we went through those phrases earlier today and you were programmed the way that I was, or I was programmed the way that you were, I'm going to hazard a guess that you all have similar programming and that failing is not real high on your list. I blame the schools, right? And that's sort of and I come from a family of teachers, so I think I can say that with some level of credibility. But it's like, hey, if you don't do well on the test, that's somehow bad, right? Well, no, you got to figure your way through it, right? We've been conditioned for some of that stuff. God does not want any kind of earthly perfection from us. He gave us the perfection He wanted us to have. He took care of that, right? Then He wants us to participate. He doesn't care with us doing everything right. At least not right now. All right? He doesn't care with us doing everything, but He does want us to be participating. He does want us to be in the game. He does want us to be shifting. He wants us to be stepping out of that comfort zone. He does want us to be exercising our faith and not being a prisoner to fear. That's where we are. 1 Peter 5:8. Peter writes, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." And I'm going to tell you, the enemy roaring like a lion, what's he trying to do? He's trying to put fear into you. I probably drew this before, but lions hunt in a very unique way. So you have, and I'm not going to, these are whatever lions eat on the savannah, antelope, wildebeest, I don't know, whatever they are. And what you do is we know that the hunters in the lions are the female lions, right? The lionesses are the ones that go and they do the kill, right? And so what they do is the female lions, they come in like this, and they surround the prey. And then the male lion, who comes up here, and that's supposed to be the lion's mane. That's my art here, right? What does he do? He roars. And when the male lion roars, it scares the prey, and what do? They all run directly in to be killed. Like, that's how they hunt. That's like, this is the stick person's view of National Geographic or Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom here, all right? You know, that's how that works. And that's the way the enemy works, right? He comes and he tries to scare you and run you and get you to go a place where you're not going to be doing the things that you want to do. the antelope don't want to be eaten, right? You know, that's where we are. The lion, the roaring lion intends to scare us away and keep us from advancing. I had a couple of notes here just to wrap up. It's not what we can do, but what we will do that counts. It's not what we can do, but what we will do. And at some point, your ability to make a decision shifts from choosing between the best option and deciding whether or not to take a risk, whether or not you're going to step forward in faith. And I have a sheet here. Taryn, will you pass these out? There's a number of stories on this form, but these are all people who took risks. And I think there's only 7 on there. You can find many, many more than that in Scripture. But you can find all these people, and you'll see that some of the risks that they took were a little bit bizarre. Why would Shepherd David take a slingshot into a fight? That seems a little bizarre. That seems a little unreasonable, does it not? So there really can be no such thing as risk in your life if you operate from an awareness of your connection to God as your source. If God's going to give you an idea, He's going to provide you a pathway to make that idea work out, right? That's what He did with Moses. That's what He's done with all these folks. Now, it may not be exactly as you envisioned it. It may be a little bit on the bizarre side, and that's where all of us come in, right? This is where all of us come in. The solution for your issue doesn't always come from you. Barb, I'm going to embarrass you right now. And I say that in a loving way. Those of you that went through Next Steps, some of you went through Next Steps, and part of the Next Steps was to do a spiritual gift assessment. Now, this was a wonderful thing, and it was something that whenever we tested this, we did it in class. We did the scoring, we gave it back, and we said, well, we can't do this with 60 some odd people in the room. We're going to have to do something different. And so I had resigned myself to 2 days to score spiritual gift assessments. I'd said, all right, we're going to do them on Sunday. I'll get the things. I'll score them all out. I should have that done by end of day Tuesday. All right. I talked to Sean, somehow Sean found out about it, and he says something to Barb. And Barb, I'm going to put words in your mouth. You can correct me. Barb says, I like to do things like this. Who knew? Who knew? So we meet after whatever that was, week 2 of Next Steps. We divide them up. Now, my dad was in the hospital that day, and so I was like, well, I'm going to go to the hospital, whatever. And so we made photocopies of all these things, and I told Barb, you work from the front, I'll work from the back, and we'll meet up somewhere in the middle here, right? And again, Tuesday. It's Sunday at 11 o'clock. I'm thinking Tuesday. We get done with church. I go to the hospital and you can find the email timestamp on this. I think it was about 2:30 in the afternoon. I get an email and text message from Barb that says, they're all done. They're all done. And I went and looked, and they were. They were all done, right? It was a solution that needed to be done. It didn't have to come from me. There's resources all around us. And when people work in their gifts and their talents, like that stuff is easy. That stuff is enjoyable. It's not 2 days of crunching a spreadsheet, right? That's the way it is. So this is the myth of risk. I want to challenge you in your perception and your attitude this morning towards risk. What goal, what purpose, what dream, what want have you been delaying because of some adverse relationship you have with risk? And take a look at those stories on that handout. Check those out. And I want to challenge your relationship with risk this week and your comfort zone this morning. I want to challenge you to step out of that comfort zone. I want to challenge you to take that risk. I want to challenge you to step out in faith towards realizing those goals and dreams and ideas that God has given you. And with that, I will put the 3 letters on the board, ACT. Based on what's been presented here this morning, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned today that you can teach to somebody else for their sake and yours? And for those of you that want a new thing to put with this, I will remind you that action changes things. So that's what I have here for you this morning. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to ask, because I've gone long, that we circle the room for prayer.